You know that feeling when everything seems too perfect? When the universe aligns so beautifully you start waiting for the other shoe to drop? That was me on my wedding day, August 15th, 8 years ago. Standing at the altar in my perfectly pressed tux, watching Lena glide down the aisle in her $3,000 dress, I thought I was the luckiest man alive. But I had no idea what she'd already done. But here's the thing about perfection. It's fragile, and sometimes it's nothing more than an elaborate lie. I should have known something was off when Lena spent an unusual amount of time on her phone during the reception preparations. As her new husband, I chalked it up to wedding day nerves, maybe coordinating with the photographer or checking on last-minute details. After all, she was a marketing manager. Being glued to her phone was practically part of her DNA. But there was something different about the way she held it, the way she'd quickly flip it face down when I approached, the secretive little smile that would cross her lips before she'd catch herself and put on that radiant bride face. The ceremony itself was flawless. When we exchanged vows, Lena's eyes filled with tears as she promised to forsake all others, to be faithful in good times and bad. I remember thinking how authentic her emotion seemed, how her voice trembled with what I assumed was overwhelming love. Looking back now, I wonder if those tears were actually guilt, if that trembling was rather than joy. But in that moment, I was completely consumed by the woman I'd spent 3 years courting and was now pledging my life to. The reception at the Grand Ballroom was everything Lena had dreamed of. Elegant centerpieces, a 7-piece band, and a menu that had cost us nearly $15,000 alone. I'd worked overtime for months to afford the wedding she wanted, dipping deep into my savings account that I had been building since college. But seeing her happiness made every extra hour worth it, or so I thought. The first real crack in my perfect day came around 9 p.m., during what should have been one of our most intimate moments as newlyweds. I'd gone looking for Lena to steal a private moment together before we cut the cake. The ballroom was packed with our guests, everyone dancing and celebrating, but I needed just a few minutes alone with my wife. The bridal suite was on the second floor of the venue, and I climbed those stairs with a heart full of love and anticipation for our future together. I found the door slightly ajar and heard Lena's voice inside. She was speaking in hushed, urgent tones, not the voice of a blissful bride, but something else entirely, something secretive and intimate that made my stomach clench with an inexplicable dread. I pushed the door open just wide enough to see her standing by the window, her wedding dress bustled up, and her phone pressed tightly to her ear. "I can't stop thinking about you either," she was saying, her voice barely above a whisper. "Tonight feels so wrong without you here. I keep imagining what it'd be like if things were different, if I'd been brave enough to choose differently." My blood turned to ice. This wasn't a conversation with a bridesmaid or her mother. This was intimate. This was wrong. I stood frozen in the doorway, my hand gripping the ornate handle so tightly my knuckles went white. "I know, Ryan. I know we said we wouldn't do this anymore, but seeing all these happy couples tonight, promising forever to each other, it's making me question everything. What if I'm making the biggest mistake of my life?" Ryan. Ryan Cole. Her ex-boyfriend from college. The one she dated on and off for 6 years before we met. The one she claimed was ancient history whenever his name came up in conversation. The one she had assured me was nothing more than a closed chapter in her past. I should have burst through that door. I should have confronted her right there, demanded an explanation, ended the charade before it went any further. But something held me back. Maybe it was shock. Maybe it was the part of my brain that processes information systematically, the engineer in me that needed more data before drawing conclusions. So I listened. "No, of course he doesn't suspect anything. Ethan's too trusting, too focused on making everything perfect. He sees what he wants to see." Her laugh was bitter, nothing like the melodic sound I'd fallen in love with. "Sometimes I think he loves the idea of me more than he actually loves me. He's built this whole fantasy of who he thinks I am." The words hit me like physical blows. Each sentence shattered another piece of the reality I'd constructed around our relationship. 8 years. 8 years of believing I knew this woman, of building a life with her, of planning a future that suddenly felt like it was built on quicksand. I have to go. They'll be looking for me soon for the cake cutting. But Ryan, this isn't over. It can't be. Not when I feel so empty standing next to him. She ended the call, and I quickly stepped back, my mind racing. When she emerged from the bridal suite 2 minutes later, she was wearing that perfect bride smile again, the one that had fooled me completely. She took my arm, and we walked back down to our reception together. But everything had changed. The woman beside me was a stranger wearing my wife's face. For the rest of the evening, I played my part perfectly. I smiled for photos, gave a heartfelt speech thanking our families, fed her cake while our guests applauded and cameras flashed, but inside, I was documenting everything with the methodical precision that had made me successful in my career. Every forced smile, every moment she checked her phone, every time her eyes seemed distant when she thought no one was looking. As we danced to At Last by Etta James, the song she had chosen because she said it represented how she felt about finding true love with me, I held her close and felt like I was dancing with a ghost. The woman I'd married wasn't real. The love I thought we shared was apparently one-sided, and somewhere out there, Ryan Cole was waiting for her to come back to him. When the last guest finally left at midnight and we retreated to the honeymoon suite the hotel had upgraded us to as a wedding gift, Lena collapsed onto the bed with theatrical exhaustion, still in her wedding dress. "What a perfect day," she sighed, scrolling through her phone. "I can't believe we're actually married." I watched her fingers move across the screen, no doubt checking for messages from Ryan, and felt something cold and calculating settle in my chest. She had no idea that I knew. She thought she had pulled off the perfect deception, that she could have her cake and eat it too, a devoted husband who'd give her stability and security, and a passionate ex-lover who'd give her the excitement she craved. But here's what Lena never understood about me. I don't just build software systems, I build contingencies. I plan for every possible scenario, and I always have a backup plan. As I pretended to sleep beside her that night, listening to her breathe and occasionally murmur Ryan's name in her dreams, I started formulating my strategy. Because if my wife thought she could betray me on our wedding day and get away with it, she was about to learn just how wrong she could be.
The next morning should have been magical. Our first day as husband and wife. Room service breakfast in bed, lazy conversations about our honeymoon plans. Instead, I woke up to find Lena already in the shower and her phone buzzing incessantly on the nightstand. The engineer in me, the same methodical mind that had built complex security systems for Fortune 500 companies, couldn't resist taking a look. I knew her passcode. She'd given it to me months ago during one of those relationship milestones where couples start sharing everything. "I want us to have no secrets," she'd said with that trusting smile I now knew was completely fabricated. The irony wasn't lost on me as I unlocked her phone and found 17 missed calls and 23 text messages, all from a contact labeled personal trainer. But Ryan Cole wasn't texting her about workout schedules. "Last night was torture, knowing you were with him," read the most recent message. "I kept thinking about our weekend at the cabin last month, how right everything felt when it was just us." Last month. 1 month before our wedding. While I was working 16-hour days to pay for the reception she'd demanded, she was at a cabin with her ex-boyfriend. My hands started shaking as I scrolled through the message thread, each text revealing another layer of deception that went back months, maybe longer. "I can't keep pretending this is just physical. What we have is real, Lena, more real than whatever you're building with him." Her response made my stomach turn. "I know, but Ethan represents security, a future I can count on. You represent chaos and passion. Why can't I have both?" Both. She wanted both. A husband to provide for her and a lover to excite her. And she saw nothing wrong with destroying two lives to get what she wanted. The shower was still running, so I kept reading, documenting everything with screenshots that I immediately emailed to a secure account I'd set up for work projects. The conversation history painted a picture of systematic betrayal that had been going on for at least 6 months. Secret meetings, elaborate lies about working late or visiting friends, a whole double life I'd been completely oblivious to. But the worst part wasn't the affair itself, it was how they talked about me. "He's so predictable," Lena had written just 2 weeks before the wedding. "Every morning he brings me coffee exactly how I like it. Every Friday he suggests the same restaurant for date night. He thinks routine equals love." Sounds boring as hell. No wonder you need some excitement in your life. "The sex is—" she had started, then sent a series of eye roll and sleeping emojis that made me want to put my fist through the hotel wall. That's when I heard the shower turn off and I quickly deleted my digital tracks, making sure the phone looked exactly as I'd found it. When Lena emerged from the bathroom in a hotel robe, her hair wrapped in a towel, she looked genuinely happy for the first time since I'd known the truth. "Good morning, husband," she said, leaning down to kiss me. Her lips felt like ice against mine. "Good morning, wife," I managed, forcing what I hoped looked like a loving smile. "How did you sleep?" "Like a baby," she lied smoothly. "I had the most wonderful dreams about our future together." Dreams about Ryan Cole, more likely. But I nodded and pulled her close, already planning my next move. Because what Lena didn't know was that I'd been in cybersecurity long enough to understand that people always leave digital trails. Always. And if she thought her personal trainer contact name was clever enough to hide a months-long affair, she was about to discover just how naive that assumption was. Over the next 3 days of what should have been honeymoon bliss, I became a detective in my own marriage. While Lena napped by the pool or claimed to be getting spa treatments, I was using my laptop to trace her digital footprints with forensic precision. Credit card statements revealed hotel charges that didn't match any business trips she'd told me about. Her Google location history, which she'd never thought to turn off, showed regular visits to Ryan's apartment complex on days when she'd claimed to be working late or having dinner with girlfriends. The most damning evidence came from the cloud backup of her phone, which automatically saved all her photos. Buried in thousands of seemingly innocent pictures were dozens of intimate moments with Ryan. The two of them in what looked like a hotel room, him shirtless in what was clearly her car, a selfie of them together with a timestamp from our engagement party. They'd been together in her car in the parking lot while I was inside showing off her ring to my family. But the photograph that broke something fundamental inside me was dated exactly 6 weeks before our wedding. Lena was wearing the lingerie I'd bought her for our honeymoon, the expensive set from Victoria's Secret that she had claimed was too special to wear before our wedding night. She was wearing it for Ryan Cole in what appeared to be the cabin he'd referenced in his text messages. My honeymoon lingerie, on her body, with another man, 6 weeks before she promised to forsake all others. I sat in our hotel bathroom for 20 minutes, staring at that photo and trying to process the magnitude of her betrayal. This wasn't a momentary lapse in judgment or a drunken mistake. This was calculated, systematic deception that had turned our entire relationship into a lie. Every I love you, every intimate moment, every plan we'd made for our future, all of it contaminated by her ongoing relationship with Ryan. When I finally emerged from the bathroom, Lena was on the balcony, supposedly reading a romance novel, but actually texting furiously. I could see her phone screen reflected in the glass door, and she was messaging Ryan about how difficult it was to pretend to be happy on her honeymoon. "How's the book?" I asked, settling into the chair beside her. "Oh, it's wonderful," she said, quickly switching to her Kindle app. "It's about second chances and true love conquering all obstacles." The irony was so thick I could taste it. Here she was reading about true love while actively planning to betray the man she had just married. But instead of confronting her, I smiled and nodded, because I was beginning to understand something crucial. Lainey's greatest weakness was her absolute certainty that she was smarter than everyone around her. She thought I was the predictable, boring husband who would never suspect her of infidelity. She thought Ryan was the passionate lover who would wait indefinitely for her to choose him. She thought she could manipulate both of us forever, keeping us both on strings while she decided which life she wanted more. What she didn't realize was that her boring, predictable husband was systematically documenting every aspect of her deception with the same methodical precision I used to debug complex software systems. Every lie, every secret meeting, every text message, I was building an airtight case that would leave her with nowhere to hide when the time came for justice. And the beautiful thing about having a methodical mind is that revenge, when properly planned, can be a work of art.
Coming back from our honeymoon was like returning to a crime scene, where I was both the victim and the only detective. Our house, the same suburban home we'd shared for 2 years with its carefully chosen furniture and wedding photos already displayed on the mantel, felt like a stage set for an elaborate lie. Every room held memories that I now had to reframe through the lens of Lena's betrayal. The kitchen, where she'd cooked dinner while secretly texting Ryan. The living room, where we'd planned our wedding while she was simultaneously planning her rendezvous with her ex. Our bedroom, where we'd made love countless times while she was actively cheating on me with another man. But the worst part wasn't the tainted memories. It was having to pretend everything was normal while I gathered the evidence that would eventually destroy her. "How does it feel to be back in reality?" Lena asked on our first morning home, sipping the coffee I'd made her exactly the way she liked it, 2 sugars, splash of cream, just like I had every morning for 8 years. The same routine she'd mocked to Ryan as predictable and boring. "It feels perfect," I lied, watching her scroll through her phone with barely concealed eagerness. "I'm excited to start our married life together." She looked up at me with what I now recognized as practiced sincerity. "Me too, baby. We're going to be so happy." The casual ease with which she lied was almost impressive. No telltale signs, no nervous tics, no guilt whatsoever. She was a masterclass in deception. I was beginning to understand that this level of manipulation doesn't develop overnight. How long had she been lying to me? How many other betrayals had I missed because I trusted her completely? My sister Sophia called that afternoon while Lena was at work, ostensibly catching up on how the honeymoon went. But Sophia had always been perceptive. It's what made her an excellent lawyer, and she could hear something in my voice. "Ethan, you sound different. Is everything okay?" I wanted so badly to tell her everything, to unload the crushing weight of what I'd discovered, but I knew I couldn't. Not yet. Sophia's protective instincts would kick in, and she'd want to help me confront Lena immediately. But confrontation wasn't part of my plan. Justice was. "Just adjusting to married life," I said, forcing lightness into my voice. "It's a big change." "Mm-hmm." I could practically hear her lawyer brain analyzing my tone. "Well, you know I'm here if you need anything at all." That evening, Lena announced she was going to yoga class, something she'd recently started doing twice a week. Before my discovery, I had been proud of her for prioritizing her health and wellness. Now I knew there was no yoga studio in her Tuesday and Thursday routine. There was only Ryan Cole's apartment, 20 minutes across town in a complex I'd now memorized from her location data. "That's great, honey," I said, kissing her goodbye and breathing in the perfume she only wore on her yoga days. "I'll probably work on some freelance projects while you're gone." Instead, I spent those 2 hours doing reconnaissance that would make a private investigator proud. I'd already installed tracking software on our shared computer and set up monitoring on our home network that would log every device connection and data transfer. While Lena was with Ryan, I was building a digital fortress of evidence that she'd never even know existed. But the hardest part wasn't the technical surveillance. It was the psychological warfare I was waging against myself. Living with someone who's betraying you while pretending ignorance is a special kind of torture that I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. Every conversation became a minefield of subtext. Every kiss felt like being poisoned slowly. Every night sleeping next to her was like lying down with a viper. The breaking point came 3 weeks after our honeymoon, during what should have been a celebration dinner. Lena had gotten a promotion at work, the kind of career advancement she'd been working toward for years. We went to Marcello's, the upscale Italian place where we'd had our first anniversary dinner, where I'd proposed 2 years later, where we'd celebrated every milestone in our relationship. "I'm so proud of you," I said, raising my glass of wine in a toast. "You've worked so hard for this," she replied, clinking her glass against mine. "I couldn't have done it without your support. You've been so understanding about all the late nights and weekend work." Late nights with Ryan. Weekend work at his cabin. The lies came so naturally to her that I wondered if she even remembered what the truth looked like anymore. "Speaking of late nights," she continued, "this new position is going to require even more travel. Regional client meetings, overnight conferences. I hope you don't mind." Overnight conferences with Ryan, more likely, but I smiled and nodded like the supportive husband she thought I was. "Of course not. I want you to succeed." That's when she reached across the table and took my hand, her wedding ring catching the candlelight. "You're the best husband a woman could ask for, Ethan. I'm so lucky to have found someone who trusts me completely." Something snapped inside me at those words. The sheer audacity of using my trust, my love, as a weapon against me while actively planning her next betrayal was more than I could process. I excused myself to the bathroom and stood in front of the mirror, gripping the sink until my knuckles turned white. I looked like hell. The stress of maintaining this charade was eating me alive from the inside out. I'd lost weight, developed insomnia, and caught myself grinding my teeth so hard at night that my jaw ached every morning. The woman I loved was killing me slowly, one lie at a time. But when I returned to our table and saw her sitting there, beautiful and poised and completely oblivious to the storm she had created, I felt something shift inside me. The pain was still there, the betrayal still burned like acid in my chest, but underneath it all was something colder and more calculating. Lena Ward thought she was playing the perfect game. She thought she had me completely fooled while she built her double life with Ryan. She thought her boring, predictable husband would never be smart enough or strong enough to see through her deceptions. She was wrong. Over dessert, while she told me about her exciting new responsibilities at work, which I now knew included regular business trips to cities where Ryan had personal training conferences, I started mentally reviewing the evidence I'd collected. Photos, text messages, location data, credit card records, hotel receipts, enough documentation to prove her infidelity beyond any reasonable doubt. But evidence wasn't enough. I didn't just want to catch Lena cheating. I wanted to expose her in a way that would show everyone who she really was. I wanted the people who thought we had the perfect marriage to see what a masterful manipulator she had been. I wanted Ryan to understand that he was just another victim of her need for validation. And I wanted Lena to experience the same humiliation and betrayal that she had put me through, multiplied tenfold. "Ethan," she said, cutting through my planning, "you seem distracted tonight." I looked across the table at my wife, the woman who'd promised to forsake all others just 3 weeks ago, and smiled the same practiced smile she'd been giving me for months. Just thinking about how lucky we are, I said, how perfect our life together is going to be. She beamed at me with genuine happiness, completely convinced that I had fooled her entirely. And in that moment, I realized something that would sustain me through everything that was coming. The sweetest revenge isn't served cold. It's served at exactly the right temperature to cause maximum damage. And I was just getting started heating things up.
The beauty of being married to someone for 8 years is that you know their patterns intimately. Lena was nothing if not predictable in her deceptions. Tuesday and Thursday, yoga, weekend work conferences, and the occasional girls' night out that I now knew were actually romantic dinners with Ryan. She thought she was being clever with her scheduling, but to my systematic mind, she might as well have been sending me a detailed itinerary of her betrayals. It took me 6 weeks to set up the perfect trap. 6 weeks of playing the devoted husband while secretly installing a surveillance system that would make the FBI proud. 6 weeks of pretending to believe her lies while documenting every aspect of her double life. 6 weeks of slowly dying inside while planning her complete destruction. The first piece of my plan was technological. Using my network security expertise, I installed nearly invisible cameras in strategic locations. Not in our home, which would be illegal, but in my car, which Lena frequently borrowed when hers was in the shop. Funny how her car seemed to need repairs every time Ryan was in town for his personal training conferences. The cameras were smaller than a dime and completely undetectable, hardwired into my car's electrical system and connected to cloud storage that Lena would never think to check. Every conversation, every phone call, every intimate moment she shared with Ryan in what she thought was the privacy of my vehicle was being recorded in high definition. But technology was only part of the equation. The real genius was in the psychological manipulation, using Lena's own narcissism and need for control against her. "I've been thinking," I said over breakfast one morning, watching her scroll through what I knew were messages from Ryan, "maybe we should throw a big anniversary party for our first year of marriage, something special to celebrate how perfect our relationship is." She looked up from her phone, intrigued despite herself. Lena loved being the center of attention, loved having people admire what she'd built. The idea of a party where everyone would celebrate her successful marriage while she was actively betraying it would appeal to her sense of power. "That sounds wonderful," she said, already planning in her head. "We could invite everyone, your family, my family, all our friends from work. Make it really elegant." Exactly what I was thinking. Maybe we could even renew our vows, really make it special. Her eyes lit up at the suggestion, and I felt sick watching her excitement about planning a vow renewal while she was sleeping with another man. But this was perfect. The more invested she became in the party, the more devastating her exposure would be. "When were you thinking?" she asked. "How about the Saturday before our actual anniversary? That gives us 2 months to plan everything perfectly." 2 months to gather irrefutable evidence. 2 months to invite everyone she cared to impress. 2 months to set up the most spectacular fall from grace anyone had ever witnessed. Meanwhile, my best friend Daniel had become an unwitting ally in my investigation. During our weekly poker games, he'd started making casual observations about Lena's behavior that confirmed everything I already knew. "I saw Lena at that new coffee place downtown yesterday. She was with some guy, looked pretty intense. Probably just work stuff, right?" "Probably," I agreed, knowing it was actually Ryan planning their next weekend getaway. Ryan's sightings were giving me real-time intelligence about their meetings, allowing me to cross-reference with the location data I was already tracking. The most damaging evidence came from a source I never could have anticipated: Ryan himself. 3 months into my surveillance, he did something that proved just how arrogant and stupid Lena's choice in affairs partners really was. He started posting on social media. Nothing obvious, of course. Ryan was too smart for that.
But he began sharing photos and stories that, when cross-referenced with Lena's location data and work trips, painted a perfect picture of their relationship. A sunset photo from the same lakeside resort where Lena had claimed to be at a marketing conference. A hiking trail selfie from the weekend she'd told me she was visiting her sick aunt in Portland. A restaurant check-in from the same upscale bistro where her credit card records showed a dinner for two while I was working late to pay for the anniversary party she was planning. But the smoking gun came in early October, just 6 weeks before our scheduled anniversary celebration. I was monitoring our home network when I noticed an unusual data transfer from Lena's laptop. Using the access I'd carefully installed months earlier, I discovered she was uploading photos to a private cloud account I never heard of, a secret digital space where she was storing her entire relationship with Ryan. Hundreds of photos spanning nearly a year. Hotel rooms, romantic dinners, intimate moments, vacation trips I never heard about. But the most devastating image was a screenshot of a text conversation between Lena and Ryan from just 3 days earlier. "Can't wait to be done with this charade," she'd written. "2 more months and I can file for divorce. I've already talked to a lawyer about getting half of everything, the house, his retirement accounts, all of it." Ryan's response made my blood run cold. "What about the anniversary party? Isn't that kind of cruel, renewing your vows when you're planning to leave him?" "It's perfect, actually. Let him spend all his money on one last party celebrating our perfect marriage, then I'll take half of what's left. Besides, seeing him up there professing his love while knowing what we've been doing, it's going to be so hot." They were getting off on my pain. My humiliation was literally prelude for them. The anniversary party I'd suggested as a trap was actually playing right into Lena's plan to drain me financially before destroying my life completely. But here's what Lena and Ryan didn't understand about careful, methodical people like me. We don't just plan for success, we plan for every possible contingency. And their conversation had just revealed something crucial. Lena wasn't just cheating on me. She was planning to financially destroy me as well. That night, while Lena slept peacefully beside me, dreaming of her future with Ryan and half my assets, I made a phone call to my sister, Sophia. "I need legal advice," I said quietly from our home office. "Hypothetically, if someone was planning to divorce their spouse and take half of everything, but that someone was also committing adultery, how would that affect the settlement?" Sophia was quiet for a long moment. "Ethan, is this hypothetical?" "For now." "Well, hypothetically, adultery can significantly impact asset division, especially if you can prove the cheating spouse was using marital assets to fund their affair. And if you could prove they were planning the adultery before the marriage, hypothetically, that might invalidate certain claims entirely." Perfect. Everything I'd been documenting, the hotel charges on our joint credit cards, the gifts to Ryan purchased with our shared accounts, the elaborate lies that had cost us thousands in fake business trips, all of it would not only expose Lena's betrayal, but protect my financial future as well. "One more hypothetical," I said. "If someone wanted to expose their spouse's adultery in the most public, humiliating way possible, what would the legal implications be?" "Hypothetically, as long as you're not breaking any laws to gather evidence and you're not making false accusations, the truth is an absolute defense. You can't be sued for exposing someone's actual behavior." I hung up the phone and looked at the calendar on my desk. 6 weeks until the anniversary party, 6 weeks to finalize my preparations, 6 weeks until Lena Ward learned that underestimating your husband's intelligence is the most expensive mistake a cheating wife can make. Because while she'd been planning my destruction, I'd been planning something much more thorough. Her complete and total humiliation in front of everyone she'd ever wanted to impress. And the beautiful thing about having a year's worth of documented evidence was that there would be absolutely no way for her to deny, deflect, or manipulate her way out of what was coming. The trap was set, the evidence was overwhelming, the guest list was finalized. All that was left was to let Lena hang herself with the rope she'd been braiding for months.
The morning of our anniversary party dawned crisp and clear. The kind of perfect October day that makes you believe in new beginnings. Lena woke up excited, practically bouncing out of bed to start getting ready for what she thought would be her greatest performance yet. The devoted wife renewing her vows while secretly planning to destroy her husband's life. What she didn't know was that I'd been awake since 4 a.m., making final preparations for the most elaborate takedown in the history of marriage. "I can't believe it's finally here," she said, applying makeup with the precision of someone preparing for battle. "Everything's going to be perfect." She was right about that. Everything was going to be perfect. Perfectly devastating for her. The venue looked incredible. We'd rented the same ballroom where we'd had our wedding reception, and Lena had spared no expense making it elegant. White roses, string lights, a champagne fountain. She had even hired a photographer to capture every moment of what she thought would be her triumph. What she didn't notice was that my friend Daniel discreetly testing the AV system I'd had installed, or my sister Sophia arriving early with a briefcase full of legal documents, or the private investigator I'd hired taking photos of the arriving guests. By 6 p.m., everyone was there. Both our families, all our friends, colleagues from work, neighbors, exactly the audience Lena had wanted to witness her perfect marriage. She worked the room like a politician, accepting congratulations and compliments, glowing with the attention she craved. "You two are just so perfect together," gushed her friend Jennifer from work. "It's like fairy tale." "We really are blessed," Lena replied, taking my hand and squeezing it. "Ethan is just the most wonderful, trusting husband a woman could ask for." The irony was so thick you could cut it with a knife. But I played my part perfectly, smiling and nodding as people toasted our perfect marriage. At 7:30, we gathered everyone for the vow renewal ceremony. Lena had written new, beautiful vows about love, trust, and commitment, words that would have moved me to tears a year ago, but now just highlighted the magnitude of her deception. "Ethan," she said, holding both my hands and looking into my eyes with practiced sincerity, "you are my rock, my safe harbor, my home. I promise to love you, honor you, and remain faithful to you for all the days of my life." The applause was thunderous. People were actually crying at the beauty of her words, the apparent depth of her commitment. She was so convincing that for a moment, even I almost believed her. Then it was my turn. "Lena," I began, my voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through my veins. "When we first got married, I promised to love you in sickness and in health, for richer or poorer, for better or worse. I thought I understood what those words meant." She smiled at me, completely relaxed, basking in the attention. "But this past year has taught me something important about the nature of truth, about the difference between the person we think we're married to and the person we actually married." A few people in the crowd shifted uncomfortably, sensing something different in my tone, but Lena was still smiling, still playing her part. So today, instead of renewing vows that have already been broken, I'd like to share something else with everyone: the truth. I nodded to Daniel, who dimmed the lights and activated the projection system. The large screen behind us, which had been displaying our wedding photos, suddenly showed a very different image. A text message conversation between Lena and Ryan Cole. The first message appeared: "Can't wait to be done with this charade. 2 more months and I can file for divorce." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Lena's face faltered as she turned to look at the screen, her face going pale. "What is this?" she whispered, but her voice was amplified by the microphone she was still wearing. "This is your conversation with Ryan Cole from 6 weeks ago.
Your personal trainer, your ex-boyfriend, your affair partner for the past year? The screen changed to show photos of them together, in hotels, at restaurants, at the cabin she claimed was a work retreat. Each image was time-stamped and location tagged, providing irrefutable proof of their relationship. "Ethan, stop this," she hissed, reaching for the microphone, but I stepped back. "Here's my favorite one," I continued, as the screen showed the screenshot of their conversation about the anniversary party. "The one where you talk about how hot it is to make me profess my love while you're betraying me." The silence in the room was deafening. 200 people, everyone Lena had wanted to impress, were watching her perfect facade crumble in real time. "And here," I said, as financial records appeared on the screen, "are your receipts for your year-long affair, paid for with our joint credit cards. Hotel rooms, romantic dinners, gifts for your boyfriend, all funded by the husband you were planning to rob blind in divorce court." Lena was shaking now, her carefully applied makeup starting to run as tears of humiliation and rage streamed down her face. "You can't do this," she said, her voice breaking. "This is private." "Nothing about adultery is private, especially when you've been using our marriage as cover for theft and fraud." The screen now showed her secret cloud account, filled with photos of her double life. The audience was transfixed, watching 18 months of deception play out in high definition. But the coup de grace was the audio recording from my car. Lena and Ryan's conversation from just 2 weeks earlier, where they discussed their plan for her to take half my assets and disappear with him to start their real life together. "You see," I addressed the stunned crowd, "my wife thought she married a boring, predictable man who would never be smart enough to catch her. What she actually married was a cybersecurity expert who's very good at finding things people want to hide." Lena finally found her voice, screaming at me to stop, lunging for the AV controls, but Daniel and 2 of my other friends gently restrained her. The performance was over. "The divorce papers have already been filed," I announced as Sophia stepped forward with her briefcase. "Given the documented adultery and financial fraud, Lena will be lucky to leave this marriage with the clothes on her back, let alone half my assets." The room erupted in chaos. Lena's family was in shock, her friends were backing away from her like she was radioactive, and my family was looking at me with a mixture of pride and concern. But all I felt was relief. The crushing weight of her deception was finally off my shoulders. Ryan Cole, who had been hiding in the parking lot waiting for Lena's triumphant text about successfully fooling everyone, was arrested 20 minutes later when he tried to leave town. Turns out that private investigator I'd hired had discovered Ryan was married too, and his wife was very interested in the photos of his business trips with his clients. As the guests filed out in stunned silence, taking pictures and videos that would make Lena infamous on social media within hours, Lena sat alone at our head table, her perfect dress wrinkled, her makeup destroyed, her reputation obliterated. "Why?" she asked me, her voice barely a whisper. "Why did you have to humiliate me like this?" I looked at the woman who had promised to forsake all others just 1 year ago, who had shared my bed while planning my destruction, who had used my love as a weapon against me. "Because," I said quietly, "you taught me that some people deserve to experience exactly the same pain they inflict on others. Consider this your education in consequences." 6 months later, I received an invitation to Ryan Cole's divorce proceedings, where his wife was using my evidence to take him for everything he was worth. Lena had moved back in with her parents, her career destroyed by the viral videos of her exposure, her social media accounts deleted, her reputation permanently shattered. As for me, I kept the house, kept my retirement accounts, and kept my dignity. Most importantly, I learned that trust once broken reveals truths about people that can never be unseen. The moral of the story isn't about revenge, it's about the fact that in the age of digital footprints and surveillance technology, thinking you can deceive someone indefinitely is the most naive assumption a person can make, especially when that someone happens to be a lot smarter than you gave them credit for.